And here we are in Module 8. This lecture is split into two lectures. Part 1, which covers the foundational decisions, what a campaign is, how to set a clear objective, how to define your audience, and how to deploy story types across a campaign arc. And Part 2 covers multi-platform coordination, a note on measurement, a really short note on measurement, and the assignment walkthrough. This is the module where everything you've done up till now should come together. Have I said that before? If I have, this is really the module. Anyhow, your brand foundations document gave you an organizational voice, the brand voice that you need to convey. Your platform strategy matrix mapped where your audiences are. Your content series work showed you how you can connect stories across platforms. And now we're going to deploy all of that in service of a single, specific, time-bound objective. There are 4 sections in Part 1. These are the foundational decisions, the ones you need to make before you write a single word of comment. Section 1 is definitional. What is a campaign? And how it differs from the content series work you did in Module 7. Sections 2 and 3 are the most important decisions in the campaign design, the objective and the audience. You need to know what your message is and who you are saying it to. You need to get these right, and then the rest of the deck follows. The rest of your campaign will follow. Get them wrong, and you're doomed. Not to be hyperbolic. Anyhow, section 4 is where the story types become operational, not just categories, but a sequencing framework for moving an audience from where they are to where you need them to be. Section 1. Before we can design a campaign, we need to be precise about it is. This word gets used a lot in communications work, and often it's used very loosely. And that looseness causes problems when it's time to evaluate whether something worked. And that evaluation is at the core of successful strategic communication. So let's be precise, because campaign gets used to mean almost anything in strategic communication. I've heard people call a single Instagram post a campaign. It's not. I've heard organizations describe their entire year of content as a campaign. Probably not that either. Because a campaign has 4 specific elements and all 4 are required. It needs to be coordinated. The pieces are designed to work together. They reference and build on each other. They collectively move the audience towards the same goal. If you pulled one piece out and it didn't affect the others, you don't have a campaign, you have a collection of posts. They need to build toward or include your primary message, your specific message for that campaign. You need to have a defined time window. A campaign ends. That's not optional. The ending is what makes measurement possible, and the deadline is what creates urgency for the audience. A single objective. I cannot overstate how important this is. When an organization tries to use a campaign to build awareness and drive donations and recruit volunteers, what usually happens is they accomplish none of these things fully. The objective must be measurable, not raise awareness, not engage our community, but a specific behavior, a specific audience, a specific date with a specific outcome. We call this a SMART objective. Specific, measurable, agreed upon, relevant, and time-based. The agreed upon and relevant are less important because those are internal concepts. But specific, measurable, and time-based are going to be the things that I stress, along with a specific target audience segment. Which means I also want to address what comes out of Module 7, which could be confusing. In Module 7, we spent a lot of time on content series. A series and a campaign are not the same thing. A series is organized around a theme. A campaign is organized around an objective. A series can go on indefinitely, and it doesn't need to end. A campaign must end. A series measures relationship quality over time, and a campaign measures a specific outcome. The relationship between the two is this. A series can be one of the tools inside a campaign. The build phase of a campaign might deploy your Why I Give patron story as one of its content vehicles, but the series doesn't define the campaign, the objective does. This matters for your assignment and, for your life, because the campaign strategy deck is not an expansion of your content series work. It's a new layer of strategic thinking that uses the series architecture you've built as one of the tools. The ability to think of content in a series is absolutely vital for coming up with a campaign. But a series and a campaign are, as I've said, not the same because a campaign has a definite endpoint. On this slide, you see 5 campaign types that cover the vast majority of what arts nonprofits run. If you can think of some others, send them to me because I'd like to know. Anyhow, I've listed each with its most natural story type architecture, the anchor type and one supporting type. This isn't a formula. You don't have to, it doesn't all mean that you, for season launch, you always need value and founder, but it does reflect the strategic logic of how you use each story type in a campaign type. Annual fund campaigns need to activate existing donors. The emotional work is about belonging, which is a customer story, and meaning, which is a purpose story. Audience development campaigns need to convert people who've had a first experience but haven't committed and show them the transformation, value story, and the social proof that others like them have made the leap. Again, a customer story. Season launch is interesting because the founder story often does some unexpected work there, reminding longtime subscribers why they first fell in love with the organization and giving new audiences a sense of the institutional depth. Capital campaigns are the long game. Trust building there is everything. Founder and purpose are doing the credibility work over a longer arc. But choose the type that makes most sense for where your portfolio organization actually is right now. So the objective is the most important decision in campaign design. Every other choice, story type, platform timeline, follows from it. This section gives you the framework for writing an objective that will actually hold up. Again, this is a repeat. I typed it twice. The objective is the most important decision in campaign design. Get it wrong, and even excellent content execution isn't going to save you because you won't know what you're trying to accomplish. 4 tests, and all 4 are required. Specific behavior. The objective names what someone is going to do. Not what they feel or what they think, but what they will do. Donate, subscribe, register, buy a ticket, apply for membership. A specific audience. The objective names who that specific audience is. Not your general audience. That is much too broad. Go at least 1 level down. Mid-level donors who gave last year but haven't given this cycle. First-time visitors who came to our free summer series. Parents of students in our education program. Those are specific audiences. Time-bound. Deadlines create urgency for the audience and make evaluation possible for you. Without an end date, you can never know whether your campaign worked or not. Measurable. You need to know yes or no whether the objective was achieved. Raise awareness. Well, how do we define that? How do you measure it? I can't measure raised awareness, but 50 new email subscribers, I can measure. And I can say either I have 50 or I don't have 50. It has to be yes or no. So in general strategic communication, we talk about these as SMART objectives. Again, for specific, measurable, and time-bound. Specific refers to that specific behavior that you want and the specific audience that you want to aim the message for that behavior at. Measurable, yes or no. Percentage increase. Number of things that are being done. And time-based, we have to have an absolute end date where both the people we are targeting know that this is going to end, right? And we can measure it. So here's the structure. You use it as a starting point. It is not a template. Resulting in measurable outcome, that's the thing that many people skip. Please don't. It's the difference between describing a behavior and connecting that behavior to an organizational value. 50 new email subscribers matters because those are 50 more people who can be cultivated towards giving. So you need to say that. Look at the weak examples. They're not wrong. Raising awareness and growing the donor base are real goals, but they're not SMART objectives. You can't tell when you've achieved them, and you can't tell who's supposed to do what by when. The strong examples are uncomfortable for some people because they get so specific. What if we only get 60 subscribers instead of 75? Well, that's meaningful information. It tells you something about your list growth rate that will make your next campaign better. Failure is not, failure's not great, right? But failure's not inherently the problem. Failure is where you get information to improve your communication. Vague objectives protect you from that failure, but then you don't learn anything. So we want specific objectives that we can learn from either the success or the failure of that objective. A campaign audience is more specific than your entire broad audience. You are designing for the people whose behavior your objective is trying to change. And to do that well, you need to know 4 things about them. Your campaign audience is not your donors or your patrons. It's the specific people whose behavior your objective is trying to change. So those 4 things, what are they? Where are they? That's the first one. Where are they? Not the platform name, but the specific content. Your mid-level donors might be on LinkedIn, but they're on it during work hours for professional reasons. These changes what kind of content works. Know the context, not just the platform. Number 2, what they already believe. Their starting point determines how much work your campaign has to do. A lapsed donor who gave 3 times before is a very different animal from a first-time visitor who just attended 1 show. Number 3, what do you want them to feel? What do they need to feel? This is the emotional design question, and it's the heart, among other things, of both a good strategic message and a story. What shift needs to happen before they'll act? Reignited connection, urgency, belonging. The answer tells you what story type to reach for. What would stop them? That's a question that most campaigns don't answer, but it's really important. If the barrier is cost, then your content needs to address cost. If the barrier is not knowing the organization well enough to trust it, your content needs to build trust. Ignoring the barrier doesn't make it go away. Understanding the barrier means that you can adjust your message, or maybe you need to adjust your audience if the barrier is something that those people cannot overcome. So one mistake that I see in campaign work is that the organization tries to write one piece of content that speaks to both their primary and secondary audience. Anytime you try and address more than one audience segment, chances are the content splits the difference and it doesn't matter to anybody. The quote of Professor Marsh is, if you try and speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And this is part of that. Your primary audience is your campaign's target. That's what you design everything for. Your secondary audience has a different job, amplification. Board members share donor content to their personal networks. Longtime subscribers forward your appeal to friends who might be interested. Artists tag their followers when you publish a piece featuring them. The secondary audience doesn't need to be converted, but they need to be equipped. Give them something easy to share. Make the forward obvious. Design the campaign for your primary audience and think about what that secondary audience needs to do to complete their amplification job. But again, your message is a message for that primary audience. The secondary audience is going to do their job, right? No matter what the message says, as long as you present it to them in the right way, as long as you make sure that it's shareable and easy for them to use. The message itself is designed to change the behavior of that primary audience. So, story type deployment. This is where halls for story types become operational tools rather than categories. In a campaign, you're not just selecting the right type for a single piece, you are sequencing types to build momentum across the full arc of storytelling. 3 phases, all 3 phases are required. The open phase is not optional filler before the real campaign begins. It's the work that makes the convert phase possible. You are establishing an emotional connection, emotional resonance, making the audience feel something specific related to your organization before you ask them to do anything. And that's important because you need the warm fuzzies. You need those good feelings before you ask someone to do something, because otherwise, we're humans. We say, the only reason you said that to me is because you're going to ask me something. You need to offer people something first. And for a nonprofit, that is usually an emotional bond. And then you can make the ask. The build phase deepens that resonance. It provides evidence, context, and social proof. Social proof is that other people believe the same thing. Anyhow, it addresses barriers that would stop your primary audience from acting. This is where the purpose and founder stories do their most valuable work. And here we get to the make it or break it phase. The convert phase is where your ask lives. It should be direct and specific, and it should connect the action explicitly to the transformation you've been showing through the open and build phases. The most common campaign failure is collapsing all 3 phases into one piece, but the ask only lands well after the open and build phases have done their work. You cannot skip a phase. You can compress or expand the individual phases depending on your timeline and your audience, but skipping open goes directly from cold to ask, which is the digital equivalent of a stranger asking you for money before saying hello. And that just doesn't work. So here's what the 3-phase arc looks like in practice, deployed across a 4-week annual fund campaign. Week 1 is the open. You're not asking for anything. You're doing the relationship work. You're showing the audience what this organization means to someone like them. A patron story, a real name, real detail, real transformation. If you want an example, think about the last National Public Radio fund drive that you heard about. 2 weeks before the fund drive begins, you start to see an uptick in stories about how much that station means to people like you. That's the open phase. Weeks 2 and 3 are the build. Purpose stories answer, what do you stand for? The founder story answers, can I trust that you'll still be here in 10 years? These are the questions mid-level donors have in the backs of their minds. Answer them before you ask them for anything. And after you've done all that prep work, after you've put people into the right headspace where they understand what's in it for them, why they should be supporting this, right? What good do you do? Then you can ask them for money, and that's week 4, which is convert. The ask arrives after 3 weeks of emotional investment. The ask should be direct, specific, and connected explicitly to the transformation you've been demonstrating. Not, please give, but your gift of $500 pays for a teaching artist's residency in a public school for a full semester. Notice the platforms. Email is doing a lot of heavy lifting, which is why, despite having social media in the title of this class, email is really important, and I have to talk about it, right? Email works on weeks 1, 3, and 4. Facebook and LinkedIn appear in the build phase, where you're doing trust building work, and long form social media content, which is what we put on Facebook and LinkedIn, is better at trust building than, a TikTok video. Instagram runs throughout the awareness level because Instagram builds a lot of engagement and brings a fair amount of brand awareness, but it doesn't tell stories all that well. That's it for part 1. I'm heading over to part 2, which we're going to talk about platform coordination, a little tiny bit on measurement, and then I'm going to walk through your assignment for you. You don't need to skip any time between part 1 and part 2, but I do want you to think about a couple of things before you move to part 2. Take a few minutes to think about your portfolio organization. What campaign type fits where it is right now? Annual fund, audience development, season launch, capital campaign, or an event? Which one, frankly, would be easier for you to do right now because, we are working at a little bit of a disadvantage. So think about, annual fund may be a little more, biting off a little bit more than you can chew. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If you have the information and if that's the feel you've got, you go. But I want you to think about what campaign fits your audience, fits your audience, fits your organization, fits where they are in their life cycle, and is something that you can accomplish most effectively. Because after all, you want this to be a portfolio piece that shows you doing your best work. Try drafting your campaign objective before you watch part 2. The objective is the foundation. When you have a draft of your objective in hand, when you watch the platform coordination and assignment sections, the material will hopefully land differently, and you'll be able to see how each piece of the framework connects to the specific goal, your specific objective. As I said, part 2 is available right now, and there's no requirement for you to take a break, except that I want you to take a break and think about the things I just talked about.